All right. So welcome today to our second series in the academic support series, our second webinar. Today we will be discussing succeeding in online courses. So with the onset of the pandemic, most educational institutions were forced to move traditional face-to-face classes to online. And while some students and instructors may have had experiences previously with online learning prior to the pandemic, many were faced with having to learn an entirely new skill set while trying to adjust to learning in a more independent and less personal manner. And so while some students have and instructors have been able to comfortably adjust to learning in online environments, other students and instructors have continued struggling and have found out that they may need a little bit more assistance in developing their skill sets to learning in an online environment. And so today with this presentation, what we wanted to do with this particular topic is just share a little bit of some tips and tricks for students and some instructors to be able to use to help to adjust to succeeding in online environments. So this presentation is intended for people that are just looking to either learn some tips to start building better habits and better skill sets for succeeding and working in online environments, and also for those that are looking to improve their experience with online learning. So the majority of this presentation should take about 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and touch on quite a few subjects. If there are any questions as I'm working through some of this information, you're more than welcome to just drop it in the chat and let me know. All right, so our objective for today is going to be these two objectives that you see shared on your screen. Our first objective will be to provide you all an opportunity to reflect on your current online learning skill set. Additionally, we'll also be sharing information to, again, learn some tips for succeeding in online courses. So I would like to begin off this discussion by discussing some things that can be looked at as online learning barriers, so barriers to online learning. The first one that we'll be addressing is going to deal with internet and technology access. So for some students, the most glaring barrier that pops up or that shows itself when it comes to online learning and beginning to succeed in online learning is just the access to reliable internet access and technology. So this can present a barrier for several reasons. Initially, first, without proper access to reliable technology, students are already at a disadvantage, particularly if the course requires the use of specialized technologies or even just a web camera. Additionally, some students may not have an area that they're able to quietly study in or to attend class in. Secondly, access to reliable and stable internet continues to be a barrier for many students. Some students may not have access to stable internet connections during course meeting times or to complete homework. And even if they do have access to internet services or access to reliable technology, there's not always a guarantee that that internet will be stable or that that technology will always be reliable for their technological needs. Additionally, another barrier that can pop up for online learning is the lack of physical connection. Lack of physical connection has been a massive barrier for many students. Just take a second to think about your experiences that you've had maybe with your first online course. Were you able to see your instructor and classmates? Were you able to have opportunities to interact with your instructor and your peers? How did it feel to be in a class where you weren't physically in the classroom? Lack of physical connection can present several potential challenges. For some students, the lack of interaction with peers and instructors can make it difficult to form a connection with the course. When you're lacking that physical connection and that little bit of additional connection that comes along with being in in-person classes, it can make it really difficult sometimes for people to find the motivation that they need to really continue making progress in that course or doing well in the course. And it can be a lot easier for people to kind of disconnect from the course if they're not making those connections. Some students might also find an issue with instructor availability, particularly as we get into talking a little bit more about asynchronous, synchronous classes. You might start to think a little bit more about the type of availability that instructors can have in those particular class types. So for example, if you are the type of person that really likes to ask questions as they're popping up in your mind, or you like to work best through discussion and through dialogue, you can find it difficult if you're not getting that face-to-face opportunity to ask questions to your instructor or to talk to classmates to talk through the course content and really gain a better understanding. So again, that lack of physicality, that lack of physical connection can really be a barrier to some people when it comes to succeeding in their online classes. And lastly, a potential barrier that we want to talk about is a change in teaching style and learning style. So a change in teaching style and learning style can look something like a student who has logged onto their Moodle course and sees nothing but recorded lectures and some links that are just thrown in there. And when you're a student and you're coming into a virtual environment and you go into your Moodle, you see that there's pretty much bare bones information there, nothing really engaging, nothing really exciting, or something to get you excited about the class. How does that make you feel? It can really put a bad taste in your mouth when you're starting off with online classes. It might feel a little disconnected, it might feel a little impersonal, or maybe even just a little boring. And that can already start to influence the motivation that you have for doing well in that class. As mentioned in the opening slides, many instructors are also still adjusting to the higher volume of online courses. So some of your instructors may also just be adjusting their course content for online learning delivery, and they may still be learning how to best utilize the technology that is available to them. This adjustment can certainly impact the teaching style that the instructors use. So if you're not used to an instructor who is maybe new to working in a virtual environment and they're still learning, it can really impact the typical instructor teaching styles that you may be used to. Furthermore, students may have to adapt their personal learning styles for online learning. With online learning, students may have to engage in a more self-directed learning style. And what that means is that students may have to take on more responsibility to ensure that their learning remains on track. This could mean that students may have to take more of an active role in how they learn. This could translate into having to read articles or books outside of class, or manage your time appropriately to complete assignments, or having to adjust your communication styles to ensure that questions are answered in a timely manner. For some students, particularly first-gen students, as well as non-traditional students, this change in learning style and communication can really take an impact on their particular success in that course. And it can take a little bit of time to develop the skills that are necessary to really be able to translate those into working better in an online environment. So take a second to reflect. What did you find difficult? What aspects of online learning did you find difficult? So next, we're going to go ahead and dive into setting yourself up for success. So the first step in setting yourself up for success is just understanding what delivery method your online course has. Typically, online courses are either going to be asynchronous, which means that the learners and instructors are not in the same place at the same time. So basically, your asynchronous courses usually don't have class meeting times, or they don't have class meetings at all. You might also have a synchronous course, which means that you do have meeting times. And with synchronous courses, sometimes depending on the way that your class is set up, you could also have a hybrid model, which is a model that allows for both synchronous and asynchronous classes. So maybe one class a week you meet in person, one class a week you don't meet in person, or it could take the form of having to have a partially asynchronous course online and then meeting in person face-to-face, maybe once a week or once a month or something like that. There's real-time interaction between learners and instructors happening in more of these synchronous and hybrid functions. So if this is the type of delivery that works best for you, it may be in your best interest to make sure that you're seeking out classes that have this particular setup. So why is it important for you to know your delivery method? Knowing your delivery method will help you plan for success. Take a moment to think about the different components and different skill sets that are needed for asynchronous courses versus synchronous versus hybrid courses. Are you good at planning and keeping yourself motivated? Do you prefer discussing ideas with others? Will you need to plan to be on campus or online for some courses? How is that going to impact your schedule? These are things that you should think of as you're both signing up for classes and undertaking your classes. Next, you want to make sure when you're setting yourself up for success that you take some time to explore your entire course layout. So what's included in the course and what could be missing? If this is your first time hopping onto a Moodle course, you might want to take some time to look around the course, see what's available on the Moodle page, and make sure that you figure out where everything is. So familiarizing yourself with that course technology. If you're new to Moodle, again, you might want to take some time to just start off by checking around the entire Moodle site, getting a feel for the environment, figuring out if you can locate your instructor's contact information, the course link for any Zoom meetings that you might have, if there's going to be a discussion board or areas for you to submit your work, is there a place to ask questions, can you locate your grades and your attendance, is there a place for instructor announcements? Taking some time to look around your Moodle course page and figure out where everything is located is going to help you be able to set yourself up for when you need to start submitting work, reviewing articles, or reading books, or chapters that might be available, or any other course resources that are available. So take some time when you're starting off with your online classes to look around the Moodle page, familiarize yourself with the layout, and then also take note of anything that might be missing. Next, you want to make sure that you familiarize yourself again with your course technologies. You want to make sure that you have a plan for troubleshooting. As you're looking around your online Moodle course, take some time to see if you can find a help button or maybe a button that's located usually near the bottom or on the side that will show you where you can contact the help desk if you're having any technology issues with Moodle. You want to make sure that you have that information on hand. So check out the technologies that will also be utilized in your course and make sure that when you're using these technologies that you also review to see if there's any places available where you can submit a question or check for troubleshooting. Make a plan for what to do if your technology isn't working. So if you're required to be in class at a certain point in time and you're having issues connecting to your Zoom or WebEx, whatever virtual platform your course may be using, make sure that you have a plan for what to do if something's not working, or if you need to get work submitted by a certain time, make sure you have a plan in place for what to do if that submit button isn't working and things like that. Make sure you keep your institution's help desk number as well as your library's help desk number on standby. And lastly, when setting yourself up for success, you want to remember that your syllabus is your friend. In online courses in particular, your syllabus is really important when it comes to finding your instructor information and contact information, figuring out again where your course link or meeting information may be, as well as keeping track of due dates. If you're having in-person or virtual classes at certain times, you want to make sure that you can get those dates entered onto your schedule. It's really imperative that you as a learner be prepared. So use your syllabus to plan ahead for your class meetings, assign the due dates, and be sure to bookmark your course meeting links so that you don't have to try to find them at the last minute when you're trying to get set up for classes. Make sure you're writing down your due dates and class dates in a schedule. So in a calendar, a whiteboard, and an agenda, something that you'll be able to use if you're not able to even access your syllabus. We'll discuss a little bit more about using a schedule or building a schedule for organization when we get more into our organization discussion a little bit later on in the presentation. So take a second to reflect on something and ask yourself if you've taken an online course before. If you have taken the online course before, take a second to think about what you liked about your online course, maybe what you didn't like about that online course. How did it feel when you first interacted with that Moodle or with your LMS system, that first time you really got into your online course? What did it feel like for you to try to navigate it or work around it? Was it new? Was it easy for you to get familiarized with? Are you still having issues with getting yourself onto a course page and getting set up for your online classes? Just take a second to reflect and ask yourself these questions. So next we're going to be discussing getting organized. When you're starting to get organized, one of the first things you want to make sure that you do to get organized for your online course is to designate an online learning space. Working in a consistent workspace, somewhere that is going to be easy for you to get to, somewhere that is quiet, free of distractions or with minimal distractions, and somewhere where you can keep your things that you'll need for class organized and ready to go for use. Working in a consistent workplace can help you establish a routine. Having a consistent workspace will also allow for you to make sure you're keeping your distractions minimized and help for you to get into more of a work mode mindset. So try to designate that space prior to class, or if like we are now in the middle of a semester, try to go ahead and get a specific space designated as soon as possible. Now, this is really important to do whether you're in an asynchronous class, a synchronous class, or a hybrid. No matter what type of meeting delivery you're using, it's really helpful to have a designated space available so that you're able to get just keep yourself in a routine of where you need to be at when you're studying or doing your coursework. When considering a workspace again, we want to make sure we keep a couple of criteria in mind. And that includes making sure that your space is quiet, well lit in case you need to be available for meetings, that you have a good and stable internet connection in that space. And again, making sure that it's free of distractions or distracting items like games or TVs in the background. Be sure that you try to avoid areas that are typically associated with relaxation or with rest. So things like beds, couches, or gaming areas. You want to make sure that you keep yourself away and separated from areas that are designated for rest or relaxation versus your workspace area. Because again, we want to help you establish a routine that when you go to that space and you sit down, you know that this is the time for you to get into your work mode, into your workspace, and really get your mind straight so that you can start focusing on your online courses. Additionally, when you're designating an online space, make sure that you have an alternative space available as well. So this is really helpful in the event that you need to be at a class meeting or need to get some work done and your typical study space or workspace is maybe unavailable, or maybe there's something going on where it's not as quiet or as well lit or as conductive to your work experience as it usually is. So having an alternative in mind will really help you make sure that you're prepared in case anything happens. So an alternative is something available like a library or a coffee shop, a friend's house, somewhere quiet where you can go get yourself straightened out and focus so that you can start completing your online coursework. So you also want to make sure when you're getting yourself organized that you're keeping all of your learning materials together. Try to keep all of your course materials in your study space. Again, you've designated the study space. You know where you're going to be doing all of your online coursework at. Try to keep the things that you'll need to complete your work or your assignments all in that area. So if you've got a physical textbook or notebooks that you utilize, or folders where you keep important documents and information, try to keep those all centralized in that study space. So when it comes time for you to either hop on to your class or start sitting down to do work, you don't have to search everywhere for the materials that you're looking for. You can also make sure that you download all of your course materials and keep them together in a folder. So usually a file folder on your Google Drive or on your computer or even on a thumb drive that you'll be able to keep up with. Make sure you download your course materials and keep them together so that in the event that you cannot access the internet or something's going on and you need to get to a document that you need to complete an assignment, you'll be able to easily pull it up without having to search around in your Moodle course page. You can do something like creating folders for each course or each assignment, or a resource folder to keep everything together in one convenient area. Lastly, when getting organized, you want to make sure that you're keeping copies of everything. Technology isn't foolproof. Mistakes can still happen. Most of us have probably had the experience where we will try to submit something and it looks like it's gone through, but then we later on get an error or an instructor reaches out to us to let us know that they haven't received something. In that event, it's really helpful to make sure that you keep copies of all of your works that you submit. This is also really helpful for the event that you need to ever reference that material later on. So again, we have another short reflection period where I want you to just take a second to reflect and think, where do you typically study for online classes? So take a second to think about, do I have an area that's designated for me to work in, or do I typically just sit down and work wherever I currently am? What type of space is it? If you have a space designated, do you have an alternative space designated? Is your main study space in your alternative space in a well-lit area where it's quiet and you're free of distractions? If not, is there somewhere else you could be doing your work at? So the next topic we'll be discussing is managing your time. The first thing we want to do when managing our time is make sure that we're planning ahead. Managing your time efficiently, especially when you have those online courses, is crucial to your success. As we talked about before, technology is not foolproof. There can always be things that happen. Maybe your internet goes out or something's going on with your laptop or your computer where you can't get into your course. Make sure that you plan ahead for things that like that could happen. So having your troubleshooting information available, your help desk phone number available, anything that might be necessary to help you get back on track as quickly as possible to being a part of your online learning environment. Additionally, with planning ahead, you want to make sure that you're creating a schedule for study times, class meeting, and review times. So if you're the type of person that maybe procrastinates a lot or finds it really difficult to get started on an assignment, go ahead and plan out your study times, your homework working times, or the times where you'll be sitting down and participating in your classes. Having those reminders set either on your phone, on a whiteboard, your agenda, or your schedule, whatever way you typically use to keep track of things and keep yourself on a schedule, make sure you're writing things down, such as due dates, class assignments, class meeting times, all of that beforehand. And make sure that you're also regularly reviewing the schedules that you set for yourself so you understand and know what's coming up and what's going to need to be done at certain times. Try to commit to a study time or a study routine when you're participating in online courses. Most suggestions say to schedule at least 3 hours per week per credit hour, but I usually suggest that you as a student figure out what works best for you and then try to keep that routine going. So if you're in a class that's online and it's typically a little bit easier for you, you might not need 3+ hours to study for that particular class. You may only need an hour or two blocked off per week to study for that class, review notes or any material, or study for things or complete homework assignments. Other classes, you may find that you need more time. So make sure that you're not typically sticking to a small rule of thumb, but you're adjusting the study times that you have set aside based off of the particular difficulty of the course that you're enrolled in. So when you're setting your study routines, make sure that you know your productivity hours. Don't schedule things too close to times where you're not productive or too close to your class times or study times. So if you're typically more productive in the evenings or in the mornings, make sure that when you're working on creating your schedule, that you schedule time to review your notes or to study or to complete homework during those hours where you know you're going to be the most productive. Try to study a particular subject or subjects on specific days and at specific times. So if you are in a biology course or an anatomy course, and you're also enrolled in an English course, you may want to pick 2 different days and 2 different times that you're working on studying for those particular courses, because those are 2 different subjects that have a lot of different information. And this way you're giving yourself an opportunity to really focus in on one subject area at a time. Try to have a backup plan for when your schedule shifts as well. So if you're typically studying on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. for your anatomy course, but you've got to work that Wednesday, try to have a backup time for when you are able to study. Usually I like to suggest for students to have a makeup day, and that's typically something like a Friday or a Saturday, a day where they usually may not have as much plans to do for homework-wise, where they can use that as a makeup time to complete any work that they were not able to do throughout the week. This way your schedule isn't thrown off and you're not trying to rush yourself to get homework assignments done or studying done and cramming them into a time that isn't productive for you. If you feel like you're running really short on time and you really don't have that much time to do the homework or studying that you're looking to do, try to just take at least 5 minutes to either review your syllabus, skim your readings, look over your assignments, or check your analysis. Try to at least give a few minutes to getting something done, just so that you keep yourself aware of what's going to be required of you to complete in studying or assignments. Additionally, when you're trying to manage your time, you can also try using time management techniques. Things like the Pomodoro method, time blocking, or the 80-20 rule are really good options to use when you're trying to practice your time management. And lastly, you're going to want to make sure that you avoid multitasking. So again, try to make sure you're committing to at least one task at a time and no more than that. Also, try to set time limits for how long you're going to be working on something before moving on to a different task. This will help you make sure that you're not spending too much time on just one thing, especially if you have a lot of tasks that you need to get through for a particular class. Keeping yourself on a time schedule will help you make sure that you're not wasting time or spending too much time on something that maybe doesn't require as much of your attention. When you're on your computer, try to make sure that you keep only relevant tabs open. So if you are in class or working on a project or an assignment, try to only have tabs that are related to that project you're working on, or if you're in your class, maybe try to make sure you only have your class tab open. So that way you're not kind of clicking back and forth between tabs that don't have anything to do with the class that you're in or the studying that you're trying to do or the assignment that you're trying to complete. This will help you really make sure that you're utilizing your time wisely without getting yourself distracted with little things. You can also, when you're setting limits for your time, use things like grouping your tabs that you're using the group function on Google. The Google browser has a little tab function up here where you can commit and create little tab groups to keep things together. So if you are doing a research project or an assignment and you find it really difficult for yourself to kind of keep things organized, you can group tabs together so that way you can keep yourself focused on one particular topic at a time, even if you're only using one browser. And so again, for another reflection time, I want you to just stop for a second and think about what your time wasters are. So if you are on your online class, how do you typically spend your time when you're in your online class or when you're completing work for your online class? Are you on your phone a lot? Do you typically find yourself switching over to a Facebook or Instagram tab? Or are you looking at Twitter things? Are you more of a procrastinator where you'll kind of start doing the work and then stop it for a little bit and maybe get distracted and do something else? Take a second to just reflect on what some of your time wasters are. Write them down and then think about some ways that you can maybe start tackling some of those time wasters. So next, we're going to discuss how to use technology to help. One of the first things that you can do to help utilize technology to help you become successful in your online courses is to, again, limit your distractions. A really cool way of doing this is to use websites that will block specific websites that you maybe don't want to use or go to when you're studying or in your class, maybe your time wasters. Or you can use different types of websites and apps to set time limits. So some really cool ones that I always like to suggest for people to check out are Freedom, Keep Me Out, Stay Focused, and Limit. These are all really cool websites and apps that will block certain websites for a certain amount of time. You can set time limits for how long you're going to block those websites. Maybe if you have a certain time that you're in class or times that you're studying, you can set schedules so that those particular websites will be blocked when you're in class and when you're studying. It's a really good preemptive way of keeping you on track without you really having to continue blocking things every time you're back on the computer. Cool app and website for you to be able to build a schedule. You can utilize something like Google Calendar, which is already connected to your MyPCC email account, as a really great way of keeping a schedule going. You can also use websites and apps like Clockwise, HourStack, and Plannyway. These are great schedule building websites that will help you block off time to focus on classwork or on studying, again, without you having to every time create a new schedule or put a lot of effort into remembering to do certain things. And the last bit of technology I would just like to share with you are time and task management apps and websites. Things like Todoist, Trello, Remember the Milk, and PomoFocus.io will help you both create to-do lists and keep track of assignments or keep track of tasks that you need to complete for your courses, as well as really cool ways for you to manage your time as you're completing your tasks. So next, we're going to discuss a little bit about maintaining motivation when you're in online courses. As we discussed earlier, one of the possible barriers to succeeding in online classes can be just a lack of connection. Lacking that connection with your instructors and peers can impact your motivation to succeed in your online class. It can also impact your connection to the course and your depth of understanding with your course content. With online learning, it can be very easy to disconnect from the course and lose motivation to be your best if that motivation is something that you're not regularly keeping up with. So the first method of keeping yourself at your motivation up and you're in your online classes is to first remain actively engaged in your class. Depending on your course delivery, you might need to adjust the way that you are actively engaging with your instructors and your peers in your class. For example, if you are taking a synchronous or a hybrid course where you need to have your cameras on or you need to be present in class, you can try having your cameras on if possible. Even if your peers don't have their cameras on, having your camera on can just help you remain present and focused when you're in your course. If you do not have your camera on or you don't like to use your camera and keep it on, you can utilize the chat function as a way to maintain communication with your peers and your instructor. Using the chat function is a really great way of asking questions if you do not feel comfortable asking the questions out loud. Many virtual meeting platforms like Zoom and WebEx also allow for you to privately chat with your instructors or classmates as well. And this could be a really great option if you don't really like to ask questions out loud and you have questions that you want to ask anonymously. Just be mindful of what you're putting in your chats and sending privately. If you are messaging privately, some platforms like Zoom do allow for the meeting host to download a log of your chat. So the next key point in helping to maintain your motivation is remembering that communication is key. With online courses, remaining in constant communication with your peers and your instructors is going to be paramount to your success. As we talked about earlier, some instructors may post regular messages or reminders in your Moodle course, and some may not. So to increase your self-directed learning capacity, that capacity to keep your responsibility and making sure that you're completing your classwork and your coursework the way you need to, it's useful to make sure that you establish a routine of regularly checking your emails, as well as your Moodle course for any instructor announcements. Be sure to also communicate with your instructor or classmates in a timely manner if you have questions or concerns, and that you're communicating with them prior to any due date. Lastly, in order to maintain some motivation, a really good suggestion is for you to utilize active study strategies. Utilizing active study strategies is a really helpful way of you maintaining your control of learning, which can help improve and increase your motivation. Active study strategies are studying techniques that require you to actively engage with course material in a meaningful way that promotes retention. So with some online courses, particularly with those asynchronous courses, the learning process can feel very passive because you're not engaging, you're not talking to your instructor or to your peers, and it can really feel like you're pretty much just being fed a bunch of information. Just think about it for a second. If you're in an in-person class, though your instructor may be lecturing, which is a passive learning style, they may provide opportunities for you to ask questions or answer questions, opportunities for you to work in groups or have group discussions, or give you an activity that is intended to help you interact with the course material in a deeper way. With active studying and using active studying strategies, you're using your responsibility through that self-directed learning, your responsibility to interact with your course material in a way that requires you to do more than just passively interact with the course content. So for some students, that could be using your learning style in order to create a way that you will actively be able to engage with the information that you're studying. So for example, if you are a visual learner, this could look like creating study guides and review materials such as flashcards or quizzes or concept maps. If you're an auditory learner, this could look like creating a voice recording of you reading something out loud. If you're more of a kinetic, physical learner, it's like you physically walking around as you're reading a book or as you're reviewing notes. And there are many other techniques that you can utilize to actively engage with your study materials, depending on your learning style. Additionally, an easy way of engaging in an active studying strategy is by using your syllabus. Again, remember, your syllabus is your friend. So you can look at the topic listed on your syllabus and write what you know or remember about that topic. Additionally, you can try to guess what upcoming topics are going to be about by using your syllabus. So as you're working through the course content, you can just take a second to look at topics, the next upcoming topic on your syllabus. Go ahead and think about maybe what you think that topic is going to be about, what concepts you may already know about that topic. It's a really great way for you to keep engaged and keep yourself excited and motivated about the next upcoming course content that you'll be learning. Lastly, make sure that you take and review notes in a way that is interesting and fun for you. So for some students, that could be making annotations as they're reading. Some students like to create Cornell notes. It really just depends on what note-taking strategy works the best for you and what method is most engaging for you. So lastly, we're going to talk about remaining healthy when it comes to online learning. When you're learning online, it can be really easy for you to just sit all day, maybe working from your computer to do your coursework or your classwork, or even just reading if you're reading off the computer all day. So be sure that you remain healthy when you're studying online. This will also help for you to keep your motivation up. Try to get up and walk around. Take screen breaks if you've been staring at a break too long. Get up and stretch if that's what you need to do so that you can keep your blood flowing and keep yourself focused. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, get some help. You can reach out to TASC. We here at TASC are more than happy to talk to you about tutoring services or about academic skills planning and study skills planning that we can help you with. You can reach out to the counseling services if you're feeling really overwhelmed and like you need a professional to talk to. You can talk to your advisor if you're having any issues in your course, or you can always reach out to your instructor and let them know if you're struggling or if you need clarification about some information or any other help within their course. So that is all I had for you all today. Thank you all so much for taking some time to review all this information with me. If you have any questions or would like some more information about tutoring services, you are welcome to utilize the information that is provided on the screen. You can reach out to TASC directly by calling our phone number or by emailing us. You can also request an appointment by filling out the tutor request form that is located on the TASC website. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording, but thank you so much for reviewing this, and I hope you all have a great day.